Welcome to this, another video in the series Investigative Intuitive Learning on a Concrete Basis. My name is Andy Reid, and in this video you will see lots of games and activities suitable for counting, addition and subtraction. And here is a list of the contents. In some cases I show a basic version and offer a selection of variations or further options or extensions. In other cases I give a basic version only. In all cases you and your children should feel free and interested in adapting or changing the rules or even inventing new rules and extensions, and then seeing whether these options offer an enjoyable or challenging version. Generally, these activities and games require no writing, but there are many versions which can be adapted to involve making a written record. Two of the many benefits of these activities are that the children are very interested and involved, and that the frequency of mathematical thinking is extremely high. In my opinion, much higher than that involved in traditional or instructional approaches. Very many of these activities can be easily used for so-called free periods or free choice, as well as for homework with parents and other persons. Here are a selection of cards which you can use for number work. The first three are available under downloads on my website. There's 0 to 9, 0 to 14 and 11 to 40. And I found very useful and readily available these commercial cards 1 to 20, which are available in 4 different colours. And then there's the normal playing cards 1 to 10, which is very helpful because the number of dots or symbols is the same as the number. And last of all, I find this very helpful for some children. Here are some activities for ordering numbers. Take here 0 to 9, shuffle them up, and the children have to organise them in order. And so on. Or you can do it with cards. 1 to 10, shuffle them, and the children have to organise them in order. Or 1 to 20, or 11 to 40, or only a selection of the numbers chosen at random, and they have to be organised in order. This is a simple game to practice ordering numbers. We use the cards 1 to 10 with 4 suits. We shuffle the cards and each child taking part gets some of the cards. And the idea is to lay the cards in the middle, starting with 5. One player starts. 3, this cannot be laid, so that's the end of his go. 5, that can be laid. And has another go. 3, that cannot be laid, that's the end of his or her turn. 5, that can be laid. And another go. 2, that cannot be laid. 4, that cannot be laid. 5, that can be laid. And another go. 8, cannot be laid. 6, that can be laid. 5, that can be laid, and the players are allowed to take from their pile. So the 4 can be added to that, and the 3 as well. And then another card, the 6 as well. The 7 and the 1 that cannot be laid. And the 9 and so on, until all the cards have been laid. Here is an option for the game to be introduced a little later. The children can also play cards onto the pile of their opponents. Here is an example. 4, that can be laid directly. 10, that can be placed on the pile of the opponents. 2, that cannot be played. This is a similar game to the one which we use starting with 5, but uses cards from 1 to 20 in 4 different colours. This is a game for 2 children. It uses the cards 1 to 20. They are shuffled and then placed in the middle. The first card is turned over, and the first player, that's this player here, must say whether the next card will be higher or lower. I say lower. It is lower, and therefore I have 1 point. The next player says higher or lower, says lower. It is 3, that's correct, 1 point. Higher, that's correct, 1 point. Lower, that's incorrect, no point. Lower, that's correct, 1 point. Higher, that's incorrect, no points. Higher, that's incorrect, no points. Higher, yes, 1 point. And so the game goes on. You can play this game with the cards 1 to 20 or with cards 0 to 40 or however you like. This is an activity for 2 children which can easily be extended for 3 children. We use the cards 1 to 10 from each of the 4 suits, and we collect them together and mix them up. The cards are placed in the middle of the table, and one child reveals the first one. The second child reveals the second one, and they have to say what the sum of these 2 cards is. 5, 11, 13, 13, 16, 14, and so on. You can use this approach also not only for addition, but for multiplication, for difference, and for finding the middle number. But perhaps you will want to use less of the cards, perhaps 1 to 6, 1 to 5, how you think fit for the children that you have. Very early on, we asked children to read numbers and understand place value. That is 364, which is a 4, a 60 and a 300. Well, I recommend before you do this, give them plenty of practice of bringing them together. That is the 300, the 60 and the 4. And a very good activity is with the base 10 dice. The children take the first 2, throw them and organise them. That's an 8 and a 6 and say 68. You can introduce writing if you like later, and so on. And then with 3, 100, 7, 150, 157, or with 4. 9,510 and 3. 9,513, and so with the remaining 2 dice later on. This is very quick, provides lots of practice, and is also very useful at the beginning of learning a second language. Here are some dice activities to keep the children amused and to help them practice with their number work. First of all, take 2, 1 to 9, throw them, and the children have to say what the sum is. 3, or 6, or 7, and so on. They can also do that for multiplication and difference, and a middle value later. And why not take 3? And first of all start again with the sum. 8, 3 and 1, that's 12. Or take 4. 1, 9, 2 and 6, that's 15, 16, 18. That's 4 pairs, or it can be used with 3s. But why not go back and think about taking a 0, 0 to 90 and 2 of these. There's lots of possibilities. That's 60, 0 and 2, that's 62. That's 0, 5 and 3, that's 8. That's 80, 4 and 6, that's 90. And then you can add a further 10 basis, 10 dice. And later a hundreder, and then a second 100, and so on. If the children are advanced, you can go for the thousands and the 10,000s and the 100,000s. In each case, starting with adding, but moving on to multiplication. This is a game for 2 people, and you need the Matty Mats strip 10 and the square 1 and the dice 1 to 20. And the aim is for a player to collect at least 100. And it starts like this. The player throws the dice and it's 18, and there's a rule which says if it's 14 or more, that's the end of your go. And if you have some in that go, you lose them. This player's turn and maybe has 7, so takes 7. 4, 5, 6, 7. And can decide to stop there, because there's a risk of losing them all if he gets 14, or throw another time. He throws another time. It's 18, so he loses them all. This player throws and maybe gets 11 and takes 11. Decides to throw again and maybe gets 4, so takes 4. Throws again and maybe gets 12, so takes 12. And decides to rest there, so keeps those. This player's turn, and he throws maybe 10, so he takes 10. Then he throws again and maybe gets 2, so he takes 2. He throws again and maybe he gets 13, so he takes 13. 10, 11, 12, 13. And decides to stop there, so he keeps them. This player's turn, throws 2, so takes 2. We keep them separate. He throws 10, so he takes 10. And then he throws perhaps 18, which is 14 or more, so there's a stop, and he loses the ones that he has got in this go. This player's turn. He throws perhaps 17, Well, that's immediately a stop. It's more than 14. This player's go, throws, and so on. The first player to accumulate 100 has won the game. You can play this game with other dice. For instance, you could play with the 1 to 12 dice and have a different stop or no stop at all. You could play it with the dice 0 to 9 twice and add them up. You could play it with the dice 1 to 30. There are lots of variations, so try them out with your children. I first showed you this game in video 9, and now I'd like to mention it again because it's such a great game, and also mention quite a few variations. It's a game for 2 people, though you can widen it to 3, and it uses a dice 1 to 6 and no other equipment. The first player throws the dice and maybe has a 2 and says what the game situation is. I have 2 and you have 0. The second player throws it and maybe gets a 3 and says what the situation is. I have 3 and you have 2. The first player throws again and maybe gets 5 and says the situation. I have 7 and you have 3. The second player throws and maybe it's a 6 and says the situation. I have 9 and you have 7. The first player throws again and maybe gets a 1 and says the situation. I have 8 and you have 9. And so it goes on until one player has 20 or more. And then the game is over and you can start again. That's the basic game. You could have also extend the goal to 30 or even 40, how you like, or introduce the dice 0 to 9, or the dice 1 to 12, or the dice 0 to 9 with numbers, or use 2 of them. And you can also use the basic version where you start with 20 and you subtract, and the first person to reach 0 or go below it is the winner. Well, that's the end of this video, and don't forget to use also commercially available games which promote counting, addition and subtraction with 1, 2, 3 or more dice. For instance, Ludo, Snakes and Ladders, race games, Close the Box, etc. I hope you enjoy all these activities with your children, whether as teacher, parent or other involved person. Go to my website for further video links, downloads and further information. And it only remains for me to say now, cheerio!